How to tell the difference between your voice and their voice. Right now, some of what you believe about yourself isn't actually yours. Not your opinions about who you are, what you deserve, or what a good life looks like. Someone else put it there. A parent, a teacher, an ex, a culture you never chose. And most of it is still running your decisions today, disguised as your own voice, while you have no idea which parts are actually you. By the end of this video, you will. If that unsettles you a little, good. Hit like, it helps this video reach the people who need to hear it. And subscribe if you want more of this. There's a moment that happens to almost everyone, usually late at night, when a thought arrives and you can't quite place it. Maybe it's about your career, or who you should be dating, or whether the life you're building is actually the one you want. The strange part isn't the thought, it's the uncertainty underneath it. You genuinely don't know in that moment whether you're hearing your own voice or an echo of someone else's. Your father's caution, your mother's disappointment, a teacher from 15 years ago, a culture you grew up marinating in without ever choosing it. And most people never resolve that uncertainty. They live their whole lives responding to a chorus of borrowed voices, mistaking the loudest one for their own. Carl Jung studied exactly this. He called it the persona, the mask we build to meet the world. Assembled out of expectation, approval, and fear of rejection. The danger isn't wearing the mask. Everyone wears one. The danger is forgetting you put it on. Over enough years, it stops feeling like performance and starts feeling like identity. It stops sounding like it's coming from outside. It starts sounding like you. Here's how this shows up in real life. Think of someone who grew up with a parent who was anxious about money their entire life. Not cruel, just constantly bracing for disaster. That kid grows up, does well, builds savings most people would envy, and still, every time they think about spending money on something meaningful, a trip, a course, a real risk, a wave of dread shows up. They call it being responsible. It isn't a personality trait. It's a nervous system trained by someone else's fear, still running the alarm decades after the original threat is gone. So let's build a real way to catch these voices. First, notice the timing. Your own voice tends to be slow. It doesn't rush you. Borrowed voices almost always carry urgency, a jolt of anxiety, a flash of shame, a reflexive need to justify yourself before anyone's even asked. Real conviction rarely needs to rush. Fear does. If a thought is stampeding you toward a decision, suspect it isn't fully yours. Second, the pronoun test. Say the thought out loud and listen to who it's actually addressed to. I should call my parents more. Is that I want to, or they'll be upset if I don't? Epictetus built his philosophy on this exact hinge. Some things are within your control. Some are not. Your actions are yours. Other people's opinions are not. When your inner monologue is secretly managing other people's opinions, you've handed the wheel to someone who isn't even in the car. Third, the origin trace. Every belief entered your mind at some point. It didn't come from nowhere. So trace it back. Who said this to you first? This isn't about blame. Most of these voices were installed with love. But protection and truth aren't the same thing, and a belief installed out of love can still be wrong for you specifically. Here's where it gets harder. Knowing a voice isn't yours doesn't automatically silence it. That's the part people get wrong. They expect the fear to evaporate the moment they name its source. It doesn't. Insight and freedom aren't the same thing. Voices don't leave when you name them. They leave when you stop feeding them authority. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal to fight exactly this, in the middle of running an empire, surrounded by 1,000 competing voices telling him what an emperor should do. What he kept returning to was a discipline of return. Every time he was pulled by outside opinion, he brought himself back to one question. What does reason ask of me right now, regardless of who's watching? Not what would look right. What's actually true and actually mine to do? He had to do this daily. That's not a failure of his self-mastery. That's the practice. So here's what to do after you catch a borrowed voice. Don't try to silence it by force. Interrogate it the way you'd cross-examine anyone else's claim. What evidence do you actually have? Is this true, or just old, familiar, and loud? A voice repeated for 20 years feels like certainty, even when it's never once been checked against reality. Viktor Frankl, who survived years in Nazi concentration camps, and lost nearly everyone he loved, wrote that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in that choice, our growth and our freedom. He discovered that even stripped of every external choice, the space between what happens to you and what you do with it can never fully be taken. That space is where your real voice lives. This isn't about isolation. It's not about cutting yourself off from every influence and becoming unreachable. That's not independence. That's just a different defense mechanism. The goal is to become the one who decides which voices get authority and which ones you simply pass through without obeying. You'll always hear your mother's caution, the old teacher's dismissiveness, the culture's noise about what success should look like. The question was never whether you'd hear these voices, it's whether you keep handing them the final vote. And this isn't a betrayal of the people who shaped you. You can love your parents completely and still decide one of their rules doesn't belong to you anymore. Gratitude for someone's care and freedom from their fear aren't in conflict. Try this with your next real decision. Write down what you think you should do. Next to it, write down who taught you that this was right. Not who agrees with you now, but who originally planted the standard. Sometimes it still holds up, but sometimes you'll find someone who was scared. Someone who never actually lived the life they were prescribing to you. When that happens, you're allowed to set it down, quietly, the way you'd set down a coat that was never yours. The people who find their own voice aren't the ones with the least influence growing up. Everyone inherits a chorus. The ones who find their voice are the ones who keep checking, again and again, whether what they're about to do is coming from clarity or from someone else's old anxiety wearing their name. You'll keep hearing other people's voices for the rest of your life. That's not going to change, and it shouldn't. Some of them carry real wisdom worth keeping. The goal was never silence. It's discernment, knowing, when it matters, whose voice you're actually following, and having the quiet authority to choose your own, even when it's not the loudest one in the room. Remember, you are not the voice. You are the creator, rearranging and rebuilding your very self. If a specific voice came to mind while watching this, tell me in the comments. I want to know whose voice it was. And if this helped, subscribe, because there's more of this coming. Question everything.